It is estimated that 4,000 Indigenous women and girls have gone missing in Canada over the past 30 years. Their voices and stories continue to be erased from the media, questions go unanswered, and women and girls remain and continue to go missing. Many cases of disappearance or murder have been reported in relation to the Highway of Tears.
We look at the story of Agatha, a 21-year-old woman who disappeared along the highway like dozens of other women and girls. In 1973, Agatha was spending the day with her cousin in a small town close to Highway 16. Her cousin had left her for a few minutes, but when she came back, Agatha was no longer there.
It doesn't make sense to me how she just went missing. I was gone for a matter of minutes, and when I returned, it was so quiet, eerie almost, and she was gone. We all searched for her and couldn't find anything, no trace or sign of her.
Violence against Indigenous women and girls can be conceptualised through the power and control wheel. This model is commonly used for both victims and abusers of intimate partner violence. The traditional power and control wheel lacks an intersectional approach. Violence against Indigenous women and girls is rooted in colonial structures. When considering the multicultural power and control wheel, we can go beyond a traditional approach to understanding structural violence in Canada. Indigenous women and girls face disproportionate levels of violence in Canada. There are systematic failures across the different levels of government and policing systems throughout the country which overlook such cases. These issues interlink with the underlying colonial structures across the nation. Such structures impose and reinforce Indigenous femicide through disrupting Indigenous matrilineal systems via settler colonialism.
Settler colonialism, which refers to Indigenous people of an area that has been colonised, being displaced by settlers, disrupts matrilineal systems and detaches women and girls from their roles as knowledge keepers and cultural disseminators. This further disrupts the reproduction of Indigenous society. These failures continue to stretch across British Columbia and along the Highway of Tears.
Vancouver also experiences high cases of violence against Indigenous women and girls. In Vancouver's downtown east side, Indigenous survivors of violence were interviewed and described experiencing violence being normalised, enduring daily occurrences of racism and ignorance from authorities, and witnessing high levels and incidences of male violence and misogyny.
On a national scale, the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls Crisis Line aims to provide support and crisis referral to impacted individuals. There was also national recognition of the issue in 2019 from Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, alongside a 1,200-page report with many recommendations towards government, police and the public to address the violence towards Indigenous women and girls.
Ultimately, on a wider scale, it is simply not enough. Cases are dismissed or left to be investigated for years whilst these individuals still remain missing or murdered.
What we continue to see across different systems is that where police and courts use framing, which states domestic violence as something that is incident-specific, using the theory that the more trauma, whether this be physical or mental, means that the abuse that occurred is more serious. This results in women and girls' experiences being downplayed and not understood as it becomes simplified.
The government of British Columbia failed to fully implement the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, despite it being adopted by Canada in 2016, which illustrates how the Highway of Tears continues to endanger Indigenous women and girls.
My sister has been missing for years, and I still don't understand why the police and government are not doing enough. As a local community, there is only so much we can do.
The significant, persistent, and deliberate pattern of systemic racial and gendered human and Indigenous rights violations and abuses is the cause of the disappearances, murders, and violence, and this is genocide.
I refuse to let our present and our future mirror our past. To the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls of Canada, to their families and to survivors, we have failed you, but we will fail you no longer.
The most apparent thing to me is the lack of safety women feel. Especially First Nations women never feel safe approaching the RCMP because of the injustice they've experienced.
Over the years, many families have come together as a community and developed the Highway of Tears organisation, which is dedicated to raising awareness of missing women and connecting families who have lost members.
Missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls is gaining increased recognition in the media and from politicians, mostly because of the continuous work from Indigenous people through Indigenous-led movements and activism work, to hold police and authorities accountable and in order to improve case investigations.
Nothing is supporting Indigenous women and girls. If anything, they're supporting the predators.
The Red Dress Project, created by visual artist Jamie Black, serves as a greater meaning other than art installation. It's a powerful tool to signal the attention and need for change for thousands of Indigenous women and girls who have been brutally murdered or gone missing across Canada. The significance of each red dress on display serves as a poignant reminder of the lives of these women and girls which were taken. It represents absence while also honouring their spirits, creating a shared space for families to amplify their voices, for communities to grieve, and for others to recognise the scale of this national tragedy. This enables individuals to remember, honour, but also act. Private efforts from those such as former RCMP officer and now private investigator Ray McAlco further point to the systematic gaps in addressing these cases. For over a decade, McAlco has tirelessly followed leads and sought justice for families, often working solely out of his own pocket. Efforts as such displayed the continued action and attention needed to highlight the injustices many Indigenous women and girls are at risk to within Canada. Thus, projects such as the Red Dress Project amplify this message, serving as more than an art installation.
It is devastating that we live a normal life and one day our loved ones are taken away from us and our lives are never the same anymore. This world is not a safe place.